The radical power of mindset, how transformation begins within. Have you ever noticed how the world tries to put you in a box? How society has a way of looking at your circumstances and saying, this is who you are, this is all you'll ever be. It's a narrative as old as time itself. But today, I want to share a story that shatters that narrative into 1,000 pieces. I recently had the extraordinary privilege of interviewing Brandy Kimbrel, a woman whose life journey doesn't just inspire, it fundamentally rewrites what we believe is possible. Brandy isn't just changing her corner of the world, she's creating a blueprint for transformation that challenges everything we think we know about human potential, leadership, and the audacity to bet on yourself when nobody else will. What struck me most about Brandy wasn't just her accomplishments, though trust me, they are remarkable, but how she fundamentally rewired her thinking to make those accomplishments possible. In a world designed to see her fail, she dared to see herself succeeding. Let that sink in for a moment. When the system says no, what does it take to say yes to yourself? When doors slam in your face, how do you build your own doorway? When the script handed to you reads failure, how do you pick up a pen and write triumph instead? Today, I want to share three profound insights from my conversation with Brandy that might just change how you view your own potential, your own power, and your own path forward. The first truth that emerged from our conversation is this: your mindset isn't just important, it's everything. We've all heard the platitudes about positive thinking, right? The kind of saccharine advice that makes you want to roll your eyes when you're in the middle of a crisis. Just think happy thoughts. Sure, I'll do that while my world is collapsing. Thanks for the tip. But what Brandy taught me goes so much deeper than good vibes only. It's about the gritty, determined work of questioning every limitation you've been handed and asking, says who? Consider Brandy Clark Hubbard, a Black woman who spent nearly 2 decades climbing the ranks in public accounting, an industry where people who look like her represent less than 1% of leadership. Today, she's a principal at Durham Mayhew, but her journey there wasn't paved with encouragement and open doors. As one of the few Black women in her firm, she encountered the subtle and not so subtle biases that say, you don't belong here. The raised eyebrows when she walked into client meetings, the assumptions about her capabilities before she even opened her mouth, the constant pressure to prove herself in ways her colleagues never had to. But here's what's remarkable: instead of internalizing those messages, she chose a different narrative. She focused relentlessly on excellence. She prioritized building authentic relationships with clients, a revolutionary approach in an industry often criticized for its coldness. She became known for demystifying complex financial controls, for making the impenetrable accessible. Her mindset wasn't about ignoring reality, it was about refusing to let reality define her limits. She didn't say, there are no barriers. She said, these barriers don't get to decide my destination. And that's the first lesson. Transformation begins when you decide that your circumstances are just that: circumstances, not verdicts, not prophecies, just temporary conditions that you have the power to reshape. But let's be honest, changing your mindset is hard work. It's not a one time decision, it's a daily practice of catching yourself when old patterns of thinking creep in. It's noticing when you've absorbed other people's limitations as your own. For Brandy, this meant constantly questioning the narrative she'd been handed about what was possible for someone with her background, her skin color, her gender, It meant replacing "I can't" with "how can I?" This brings me to the second insight from our conversation. Purpose driven leadership creates ripples that transform entire communities. When you've overcome significant barriers yourself, you have two choices. You can pull up the ladder behind you, or you can build a wider bridge. Brandy chose the bridge. Look at Brandy Waller, who leads New Vision's Homeless Services as president and CEO. Her organization tackles one of society's most complex challenges: housing insecurity, often with limited resources and during times of heightened need. What's fascinating about her approach is how she transformed personal struggle into community action. She didn't start at the top, she began as a volunteer, someone whose lived experiences informed her understanding of what truly works when supporting vulnerable populations. When the pandemic hit and resources became even more scarce, did she retreat into a scarcity mindset? No. She championed creative partnerships, like collaborating with TS Bank to fund innovation workshops that supported other nonprofit leaders' growth. The result? New streams of support, expanded services, increased impact within communities that are typically underserved and overlooked. This is what happens when leadership is rooted in authenticity and service rather than ego and accolades. It creates a multiplier effect. It inspires others, particularly other women of color in leadership, to embrace creativity over scarcity thinking, to expand their influence beyond mere survival towards sustainable change. And this brings me to perhaps the most powerful lesson from my conversation with Brandy. Self reliance fuels lasting success. Now, when I say self reliance, I don't mean isolation. I'm not suggesting you need to do everything alone or reject help when it's offered. What I mean is the profound understanding that waiting for rescue isn't a strategy. Real change begins when you decide to build your life brick by brick, with or without permission. Consider the story of another remarkable woman named Brandy from Tax Minimizers Inc. After facing personal adversity that might have derailed many people permanently, she didn't just recover, she reinvented herself as a business owner, specializing in tax strategy. In an industry where she faced skepticism about her qualifications due to both gender and racial bias, she didn't wait for validation. She built credibility through rigorous education, earning her bachelor's degree while juggling family obligations. She provided hands on mentorship within her community regarding tax literacy. Today, she's empowered dozens of minority entrepreneurs with the knowledge needed not just for regulatory compliance, but for generational wealth building. She's expanded her firm across states and is celebrated by peers as the go to expert on small business taxes among minority owned enterprises. What's remarkable is how she's helping close knowledge gaps that have historically contributed to wealth disparities among Black families and businesses nationwide. She's not just building her own success, she's creating the conditions for others to succeed too. This is the power of betting on yourself, of doing the hard work even when no one is watching or applauding, of understanding that your value isn't determined by external validation, but by the impact you create. So, what does all this mean for you, for your journey, for the dreams you've perhaps shelved because they seem too ambitious, or because someone told you they weren't for people like you? It means you have a choice right now, today. You can continue to live within the boundaries others have drawn for you. You can accept the limitations that society, culture, or even well meaning family members have placed on your potential. Or you can begin the radical act of redefining yourself, of questioning every can't and shouldn't that's been programmed into your thinking, of asking, says who, when faced with arbitrary limitations. The truth is, transformation isn't a lightning bolt from the sky. It's not a dramatic movie montage where you go from struggling to successful in 3 minutes with inspirational music playing in the background. Real transformation um, is quieter. It happens in the moments when you choose courage over comfort, when you decide to speak up in that meeting, even though your heart is pounding, when you apply for that position, even though you don't meet 100% of the qualifications, when you invest in your education, despite being told it's too late or too expensive. It happens when you look in the mirror and practice seeing yourself not as you've been, but as you could be. As Brandy's journey shows us, this isn't about positive thinking as a magical cure all. It's about the gritty, determined work of reshaping your relationship with possibility. It's about understanding that while systems of oppression are real, your response to them remains your power. So here's my challenge to you: identify one limiting belief that's holding you back right now. Just one. Maybe it's the voice that says you're not qualified enough for that promotion, or that you're too old to pivot careers, or that your ideas aren't valuable enough to share. Now, take one bold step toward rewriting that belief into power. Apply for the position anyway. Sign up for the class. Share your perspective in the meeting. Make the call you've been avoiding. Because here's what I learned from Brandy Kimbrel: transformation isn't about waiting until you feel ready or until conditions are perfect. It's about starting where you are with what you have and building from there. Your circumstances do not define your future. Your mindset does. Your past experiences, however painful, can become the foundation for a purpose driven leadership that transforms not just your life, but your entire community. And your willingness to bet on yourself, to do the hard work, even when no one else believes, is what creates lasting success. The world will try to tell you who you are. It will point to your past, your pain, your failures, and say, this is all you get to be. But remember this: the most revolutionary act you can commit is to look back at that world and say, watch me. Because when you change your mind about what's possible, you change everything. And in that change lies not just your transformation, but the seeds of a better world for all of us. What will you choose to believe about yourself today?